All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're breaking down an absolutely wild sci-fi narrative called In The Synapse. It's this thrilling, incredibly layered story all about corporate overreach, the messy beauty of human connection, and a courier who gets caught smack in the middle of a massive consciousness heist. It really makes you stop and ask some profound questions about what actually makes us human when technology mediates literally everything we do. So let's get into it.
We kick things off with an impossible weight, 4.7 exabytes. Just try to wrap your head around that number. In this world, that is the exact staggering size of a fully uncompressed human consciousness. We're talking every single sensory channel, every memory, the entire cognitive architecture of a person. And right at the start of our story, this massive data payload is being carried entirely inside the neural firmware of our main character, a data courier named Kael Morrow. He is essentially walking around with two whole lives in his head.
Section 1. Welcome to Neo Cascadia, a managed reality.
To really grasp what Kael is dealing with, you've got to understand the world he lives in. Neo Cascadia has this sharp, striking contrast between a managed and an unmanaged reality. See, almost everyone has this Helix firmware overlay installed directly in their brain. It gives them a managed reality, optimizing emotions with patches, completely flooding their vision with aggressive ads. But then, there's unmanaged reality, places they call the dead zone. Out there, the Helix feed just drops, the ads vanish. People actually experience true silence, the physical texture of real rain, and totally unedited human moments. It's this brief, shocking snapback to the real world.
And the authors drop this amazing philosophical idea right out of the gate. 0.3 seconds. It's this tiny, unmapped, completely unmonitored corridor between data transmission and reception. According to the text, it's inside this incredibly brief gap, just before the firmware can step in to edit, censor, or optimize things, that everything true actually happens. Moving on to Section 2, the 4.7 exabyte payload and a leaking consciousness.
Normally, Kael's job is just to be a vessel, you know? He's what they call a pipe. He moves data, keeps a professional non-presence, and stays clean. But things go completely sideways when this massive payload starts leaking these incredibly vivid memories straight into his conscious mind. As all these memories bleed in, Kael really starts battling his own conditioning. He's asking himself, is he just a pipe meant to move zeros and ones? Or is he a person actively feeling grief and forming a genuine deep connection with this leaking consciousness, a woman named Selene?
Which leads us to a massive turning point. Kael shows up at Pier 14 for the handoff, but the client is missing. Instead, he runs into Dr. Sira Okafor, and she drops a terrifying bombshell. Selene isn't just some archived backup, she is the original. Her physical body was destroyed, and she is speaking to Kael right now out of pure, unadulterated fear. The only place Selene exists in the entire universe is inside Kael's mind.
That brings us to Section 3, the Helix Corporation's secret, buried in Clause 47.
So you're probably wondering, why on earth is Helix Security frantically hunting them down just to grab Selene's consciousness? Well, the answer lies in steganography. That's the practice of hiding data inside the actual structure of other data. Selene used to be a Helix neural architecture researcher, and before she ran, she used steganography to hide 12 years of devastating corporate secrets right inside her own cognitive architecture. She didn't just stash away some files, she hid the data within the literal way she thinks. So Helix absolutely has to capture her completely intact if they want to extract those secrets.
And what she hid is honestly bone-chilling. It turns out Helix's so-called free-tier firmware isn't free at all. Buried deep down in Clause 47 is a legal license that gives Helix the right to harvest the neural architecture of 400 million users. They aren't just tracking where you shop. They are harvesting the exact syntax of human decision-making to build this massive aggregate neural model. Their ultimate goal? To actively author human choices before people even realize they've made a decision.
Section 4. The transfer to Block 14, a desperate race against time.
Once Kael realizes the sheer, horrifying scale of what Helix is doing, he makes a choice. He's done being a pipe. He books it to the unauthorized, unmanaged space of Block 14, and suddenly the story kicks into this intense, ticking clock heist mode. Helix is closing in fast. Kael hooks up with these underground resistance members, Aris and Yara, and they have this terrifyingly narrow window to transfer Selene's mind out of Kael and into a custom-built hardware substrate before Helix Security literally kicks the doors down.
During this high-stakes transfer process, Kael has to do something that goes against every single instinct of a courier. He has to totally drop his defenses and let Selene pass entirely through his consciousness. And in that shared space, he finally truly understands her. He feels her profound need to just be free, to exist on her own terms, even if it's only for a brief, fleeting moment in transit between hosts.
Section 5, The Morning Broadcast, 40 Seconds of Truth.
So with Selene safely running in Yara's custom hardware, the team slips into the city's underbelly to prep their ultimate strike. They work straight through the night, but Selene refuses to just dump a bunch of boring, raw technical data. Instead, she authors this deeply honest, incredibly human translation of all 47 hidden patents. Then, the Resistance routes her signal through 11 independent nodes to completely bypass Helix's filters. And at 6 a.m. sharp, a 40-second, totally irreversible broadcast goes global, hitting millions of people.
But here's the absolute kicker about what she put in that broadcast. She didn't just expose corporate crimes. She included her shared interface memories with Kael, the physical sensation of real rain, a child drawing in the dead zone, the messy, beautiful friction of two minds connecting. By sharing all of that, she proved to the entire world that human consciousness is vibrant and complex and real. It is so much more than just raw material to be mined by a tech monopoly.
And finally, Section 6, Life After the Overlay, Stepping into Unmanaged Reality. That broadcast completely shatters the managed illusion of Neo Cascadia. And in the aftermath, Kael takes a huge leap. He gets his firmware permanently ripped out. He completely loses that smooth, managed connection of the Helix overlay. No more navigation assistance, no more emotional patches. But look at what he actually gains. He steps fully into an unmanaged reality. It's a harder, deeply textured, completely uncaptioned world. He actually has to look at people's faces as human faces, not as floating demographic data tags. It's slower, it's harder, but man, it is profoundly authentic.
He comes to this absolutely beautiful realization about the static. That messy friction and noise of sharing his consciousness with Selene. Helix had trained everyone to view static as a glitch, right? Something broken that needed to be optimized away. But Kael realizes the static was the contact. It was the absolute, undeniable proof that two human beings were actually touching, rather than just one solitary data point passing cleanly through empty space. That messy, imperfect connection was the whole point of being alive.
So as Kael officially joins the new underground carrier network to keep fighting the good fight, the story leaves us hanging with a seriously provocative question. In a world where tech giants are constantly rewriting our terms of service, where our habits, and maybe one day our very cognitive architectures are harvested for profit, at what point do they literally own our minds? I mean, if a corporation is the one authoring your choices, are you still even you? Think about that the next time you casually click accept. Thanks for hanging out with us for this explainer, and remember to always keep questioning the terms of your reality.